Welcome, everyone, and welcome to the Board of Selectmen October 7th, 2021 meeting. The meeting this evening we're conducting is not a hybrid, it's remote, in keeping with Governor Baker's orders of March 12th, 2020. I am John Jeffries, Chairman of the Board. Bob Springett is here and Robin Hunter is here. Robin, would you identify yourself?
Robin Hunter, present.
Bob, are you here?
Present.
Thank you very much.
But I think my mind is out to lunch.
On a sailboat.
Chris Dwelly is
Tomorrow, maybe, Jerry, tomorrow.
tomorrow. Chris is here. Kate O'Brien is here. And we are going to begin this evening with our citizens' comments portion. Kate and I were just discussing our recycling committee chair is going to speak to an agenda item. She has requested time. We spoke earlier, and we've come to the agreement that we're going to allow her comments during or before or just after Chris's comments on the town administrator's report. So, Kate, are there any other citizens who've reached out to you with regards to topics?
No.
No. Jerry is signaling no.
If I might, I just wanted to thank Sierra Bright, Greg Cahoon, Elizabeth Rosa, and Chief McGowan for their assistance yesterday, given that we had yet another incident of the vendor not quite getting it right. We did run the vaccination clinic. Last year, we got about 400 injections. This year, we had a new contingent, the pediatrics. It was clear that the younger parents were very happy to bring in 1, 2, and 3 children, secure in their car seats, never leaving mostly. And they represented 17%. Adults represented 53%, seniors 27%. We had, as of yesterday, and I feel like I'm giving you an election report at 8:05 p.m. after the polls close, because this is incomplete. So I want you to understand this is an incomplete count. We'll know better hopefully tomorrow when Needham CVS completes the entry. But we had at least 450 individuals yesterday, at least, of which 133 were people. Oh, and I should commend the COA and Janet Claypool, because we had to once again fill in by having forms in paper form, filled in partly by us and then filled in by residents or Janet Claypool and crowd helping some of the elderly who couldn't navigate a computer. So it was very successful. We are probably going to hit 500, maybe more. And that's about 8% of the eligible population. And considering that CVS and the other pharmaceutical entities were out there busily pushing it even several weeks ago, I think we got a lot of the people, a lot of drive-ins, a lot of walk-ins even, some people in wheelchairs who would otherwise not have been able to get to it. So I thought it was very successful.
Well done. Thank you, Jerry. So, Jerry, would you mind if I just, adding on those comments, just remind everybody that that was the flu vaccination, not
Yes.
a COVID vaccination.
No, influenza.
And Jerry, that's what I said, the flu vaccine.
Yeah, seasonal influenza, which if people have not gotten it yet, I urge them to. We're really concerned that this year, with almost no experience last year, everybody was safely at home or masked. Obviously, by the way, it proved out that masking certainly helps reduce the likelihood of getting influenza. But the problem we face is, God forbid you get a case of influenza. In this environment, you run the risk of getting a doubling up effect of another disease, which you really don't want, having those two upper and lower respiratory illnesses at the same time.
Jerry, are you going to have a second date?
If there's a demand, I haven't, to tell you the truth, it didn't end up costing me that much this year because we ended up not having a police detail. The chief volunteered his own time, and the only cost was the new banner and the new small amount of signs. So, I mean, it wouldn't cost anything really, but I should also commend the highway department and Rusty Delphiny from the cemetery. They did a great job of setting up and taking down everything. So everyone who was involved really lent good value to the town.
Thank you very much. Kate, anyone else? Terrific. Well, thank you. So we're going to move to our first item this evening, and our presenter for the first item this evening with regards to the townhouse roof is Kate O'Brien, our assistant town administrator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So we are starting, we will be issuing a RFP for architectural services for the Dover townhouse roof. So before you is a charge, which makes up the committee who will be using the designer selection procedure that the town has used throughout many projects. Carl is on this call. I'm working with him. I don't know if I missed anything, Carl. We hope that the work will be done in the spring. As far as the architectural services will be done as soon as possible, probably at the end of this month and November, but the actual roof work will be done in the spring. Carl, did I miss anything on that?
No, I think you got it right to the T. We're looking for a spring start because obviously the winter's not the best time to start a roof, but it's going to take the architectural services probably a couple months to get the bid documents together.
Kate, is there anything else you'd like to add?
Nope, I think I covered it.
Kate,
Okay.
do you want to add who is going to be on the committee?
Sure, Carl. So the committee is going to consist of the town administrator, the assistant town administrator, our building superintendent, Carl, and Barry Goldman, the chair of the capital committee.
Thank you. Robin, any comments?
I am looking forward to seeing what the bids look like and then getting the project started.
Thank you. Bob?
I just wondered if, as you go through, particularly Chris, who I was going to drive this particular the bid, if there's a way of leveraging any of the work done or by the building committee going through the same process. Probably not, but if there's questions or answers, if there are people have questions or something like that, they should be a resource for us, I would imagine. Otherwise, spring 2022 it is.
Chris, do you want to comment on that with respect to the overlap that Bob mentions?
Yeah, Bob cut out, at least on my computer. It was the overlap in relation to the community center team.
Yeah, all I was saying, Chris, was if there is some needed advice, they should be available to help out. That's all.
Yeah, the designer selection for smaller projects like this is pretty standard. It's why the state provides municipalities with a template, and the requirements are pretty stringent for the type of architectural services that will qualify for this work. So it's a pretty prescribed process. But to your point, certainly if the internal team had any questions as we were interviewing folks, I found in my experience, and certainly the experience here in town with our OPM and architectural team, everybody's always willing to, help one another out with any questions that might come up. So that's a great point, Bob. Thanks.
Great.
And so just to reiterate, it's Barry Goldman, Carl, and Chris, along with you, Kate.
Yes, correct.
I have complete confidence, Kate, that you will keep them in line.
I will do my best.
So
Big smile.
move to approve the Town of Dover House Roof Committee composition and charge dated October 7th, 2021.
Second,
Ask for a second. Robin,
Second.
Bob,
We both second. I
all
was
in
on mute.
favor?
Aye.
Okay.
Robin Hunter.
All in favor. Right, by John Jeffries, Robin,
I will
and
explain it.
thank you very much.
It's hard to hear you, Robin, when you're on mute, by the way.
Yeah, I would imagine so, but I was starving, so I had to eat something. So that's why I put myself on mute.
The joys of Zoom. Item number 2, Chris Dwelly. Chris, the Board of Selectmen appointed boards and committees and / commissions. Chris providing us a summary of the roles and responsibilities of the Selectmen appointed groups. Chris?
Thanks, John. I will, I'll modify that topic a little bit for tonight. So one of the board's goals this year, as it's been in years past, is to bolster communication and collaboration between the elected and appointed boards in town. All of the volunteers and all of the entities that we have that work to make Dover the great community that it is. So as we were discussing during the goal setting session in this particular year, how we can continue to head down that path, one of the things we talked about was inviting in the Board of Selectmen appointed boards and commissions to provide them with an opportunity to update both you and through you, the community at large, on all the great initiatives and projects and the great work that they are doing. Concurrently, the board has also identified modernization as a goal and as an interest point for the community. And that modernization, in part, is to look at some of the boards, committees, and even appointed positions that Dover has carried with it for hundreds of years and might not any longer be applicable to how the government operates today and how the community is run. So what we did is Mona put together a list of all of the Board of Selectmen appointed boards and committees and commissions that you have before you this evening. It provides you with the empowering statute for those boards and committees, whether it's through Mass General Law, whether it's through local code via a bylaw, or whether it's been one of those things that's just kind of a historical entity, so that you could get a sense of the creating statutes that are behind these entities. Also in this spreadsheet, we've provided you with a very high level of the responsibility and the charge of these entities, so that you could get a full glimpse of again, all the Board of Selectmen appointed boards and committees. And lastly, what we've added is a note section. And in here, and this is what I was hoping would be the basis of the conversation with the board this evening, I've put notes on those boards and committees that I would suggest that we start the process of inviting to upcoming Board of Selectmen meetings, so that they can share with the board, again, all the great work that they're doing, and so that the board and the community at large can be better informed of the work that these groups provide. So I won't run down the list of the entities that I've proposed. My thinking behind that was for those groups that are more advisory in nature, or those groups who work on special projects, rather than those that are standing statutory entities, like the Zoning Board of Appeals, for instance. So I've proposed that these groups are the ones that we begin to schedule these meetings on your agendas. And I just wanted to provide the board this evening with an opportunity to review that list, provide me with any feedback, and we can start that process of inviting these groups in to start to have some conversations.
That's great. Thank you, Chris. I did review the spreadsheet, and I was impressed at how many committees there were. I was actually surprised there were some committees I didn't really know what they actually do. So I thought Robin would be a great candidate for the Measure of Lumber Committee.
I was thinking the same thing.
I just have a vision of Robin on Greg's tractor. Can I refer to it as Greg's tractor, or do I refer to it as your tractor?
It is not my tractor.
Robin pulling up to Bob's backyard to measure the trees. So yeah, I think that there are some of these historical committees that we may decide have, from a nostalgic standpoint, might be phased out, or maybe brought together with another committee like the Fence Review Committee. So Robin, any comment on any of the committees or the spreadsheet, or in general the committee review?
I was just thinking, if I showed up at Bob's backyard to measure the trees, there's a good chance a few of the trees may no longer be standing, especially if I was on the tractor. That was the vision that was going through my mind.
If I had hair, it would be standing on end right now.
I do think seriously that we have just seen a really good example of some of the committees and the boards that do a lot of the work, and the work that's done together, as Jerry reported, in this, the flu and the vaccination, and the vaccination drive, and the vaccination that was held yesterday, that a lot of the boards work together. The Council on Aging and the Board of Health and a lot of the boards within the town of Dover work together regularly. And that type of collaboration and coordination requires a lot. And it really, I think it's very helpful, as Chris emphasized earlier, that they come to us and give us the detail and a lot of the color behind what actually happens day to day, so we can really understand and have a better understanding of what the needs of those committees are in all seriousness. So I really do appreciate that. Anything else you'd like to add, Robin or Bob?
No, I think, it's a good exercise, maybe just to run through this and understand, how active these boards are and how difficult it is, or maybe it isn't, to keep members on the committee.
Agreed. Bob, anything?
Yeah, I want to add a comment about the historical committee and being invited to the Samhain Museum and the Carol. I mean, I think that was another example where you have just incredibly talented and people who were deeply involved in these activities. And I had been to Carol when my kids were in school, but I hadn't been to the Samhain Museum, and it was really sort of a spectacular presentation that these people did. They're not listed as invite to the BOS. Chris, I'd like you to consider inviting them. One of the things that the group said as we went through the various and sundry presentations was their concern about continuity. They're all sort of getting up there, and they're looking to see how what they do can be sustained. And they were talking about having, difficulty attracting new people to the commission. And I said, quite frankly, that it's one of the things for the town in general. It's with the lifestyle that most people are living today, invariably two earning couples. It's really hard for those people to have time to volunteer to work at these committees. So I think that would be something that'd be really sort of continuity, sustainability, modernization, mission. I think those would be interesting things to hear from about half dozen, if I counted right, boards and committees that you suggest that we invite to the BOS meeting.
Bob, the only thing I'd add is not to complicate matters, but the group that invited the board to a tour of the Carroll property and to the Solomon Museum is the Historical Society, which is actually a different and separate entity from the Board of Selectmen appointed Historical Commission. And while their interests oftentimes overlap, they are two separate entities. But with that said, we could certainly invite both the Historical Commission, which is appointed by the board and has similar interests as the Historical Society, but we can also invite the Historical Society just to provide the board with, their role as custodians of historical records and artifacts in Dover.
So you see the need for education, Chris.
What's that?
It said you see the need for education. But that sounds to me like that would make sense. Have the two entities who are involved in that come in together. It's not. It would be an interesting, discussion for sure.
Yep, we can do that.
Very well said, Bob. I agree that there's committees that really will benefit from just maybe a little bit more visibility. Just I would like you. I was just so impressed with the amount of work that group does with so few people.
Yeah.
And so that's probably something that is a theme that runs throughout so many of our committees, that the number of people, as you said, how hard is it for them to attract and retain new people, keep the people they have. So I think that would be very helpful. Anything that we can do to provide visibility to and understanding to the town in general of what these many people do in these groups. So thank you for that. Chris, is there anything else that we need to add with regards to this item before we move on?
Nothing more to add. I don't need a motion unless there are any further questions or any other requests that the board has this evening as it relates to this effort.
Nothing for me. Item number 3 is the Board of Selectmen updates. A few things that I'd like to mention with regards to areas that I attended these past couple of days. The open space meeting, the open space committee met Tuesday evening. We had a very lively discussion, and Courtney Starling was the main presenter at the open space. Courtney addressed a number of topics specific to the open space agenda for this year. A lot of it around water. She touched upon water impact, the water impact on housing, the housing plan, the housing production plan. She presented a spreadsheet that her staff, specifically Steve, an intern here in Dover. Those of you might know him. He works at the Dover Market. He's one of the cashiers. Really, really great young man. I spend a lot of time there, so I get to speak with him a lot. He's a master's candidate, and he's been an intern for the town of Dover in the summer in Courtney's department. Really did a fantastic job building a spreadsheet that allows us to identify not only land and land spaces with trails and trails access, but specifically around easements. And so they've really done a great job determining access easements, if the easement and access are still eligible, the different types of access and easements that are available to us in the town. I didn't know the differentiation between neighborhood access and townwide access, et cetera, et cetera. So it was very, very helpful. It continues to be really something that they're going to build upon. So just wanted to recognize Courtney, the role that she had played in that, and how instrumental a lot of these things are as they overlap into development issues, zoning issues, 40B issues, the housing availability, and the housing plan issue that she's addressing. In addition to, as literally while we were having that conversation on Tuesday night, Wednesday, we had a water main issue and Carl, I see you're still with us. I was told that it was Springdale. Is that correct, Carl? So, right.
Yeah. Yes, it was Springdale across from Channing Pond. It was a 12-inch main
Okay.
that I was able to isolate within minutes because there's no service connections down that end of town.
What happened as a result of that, Carl?
We are, it needs to be nothing other than maybe a little discoloration due to the flow of the break. We're tentatively scheduling for next Wednesday to do the repair of the 12-inch main. And then we'll do some investigation why it broke, because basically that's the newest part of the water system for the town. It was put in 1990. So more to follow.
Great. Thank you. So water issues, Courtney issues, with regards to the impact of where her focus is, and how it relates to the goals and objectives that are on our agenda for this year. So just something I wanted to recognize. Also, just in regards to the first topic this evening, the last thing I'll leave you with is the open space. We're unanimous in two things. With regard to the roof at the townhouse, they really want slate roofs, and they really admire the current slate roof. So that was number one with regards to the roof. And number two, on our agenda at some point in time, either this week or next, is the property at 130 Farm Street, the right of first refusal. The open space voted unanimously not to for the town not to purchase the space at 130 Farm Street. Reason being are many, but the three criteria that open space looks to is the third, recreational use, the second, contiguous to a piece of land that's contiguous to existing open space and trails, and the first one being of the impact, the zoning, the impact upon zoning. So that particular property didn't, while it met the first, potentially, it did not meet the number two and number three. So they voted unanimously that the town not exercise its right of first refusal on that project. And that's it for me. Robin?
I do not have any updates other than the item that I just wanted to discuss was the memo that we received from the recycling committee. And I just wanted to make sure that, you know, we set up a time for a future agenda to have them come in and discuss the items that they addressed.
Thank you. Bob?
I've got very little. The building committee is continuing to go down the timeline track that they've set up since the town meeting. The budget numbers came in a little higher than what was planned, but no one seemed. I mean, it was a small amount of money. No one was upset about it. They'll continue to monitor that as we're going forward. I think the plan for October is mostly around, there's a subcommittee on materials that is going to do some work. There'll be a presentation at the October 25th building committee on the outcome recommendations from that subcommittee on materials. I think there's a general consensus that we want to stay as close as we can to the representations that were made throughout 2021 on the design and materials that we use to present at town meeting, get the go-ahead from town residents. So it's pretty straightforward.
Okay. Did you think that it was a dramatic deviation from anything that we've discussed or have prepared the town for?
Financially?
Yeah, financially and building material wise.
I think financially, as I said, I think it's within the parameters that I think people would find acceptable.
Okay.
On materials, it's we're dealing with architects, and architects have a certain flamboyance and creativity, and I think the town has consistently demonstrated a fairly interesting conservative palettes and historical sort of fitting together with the ethos of the town center. But I think we'll wait and see. I think the telling will be at the October 25th meeting. Everybody, I think, is pretty much on the same page now, and so it'll just be a matter of sort of materials that are available and costs.
Got it. There was a brief conversation with regards to the meeting, and it centered around the architectural changes, potential changes, and it was Courtney obviously being present. This was the open space discussion. Courtney being present, and Courtney also weighing in about the village center and the village center project. And one of the things that became a topic of conversation was to be sure that there was consistency through what was presented, what we presented to the town, and the aesthetics, as you just described, which can be interpreted differently, from building design to building completion.
Yeah.
So
I think we're on the same page.
Good. Well, thank you. Anything else to add? Would Robin, Chris, anything to add on this particular topic?
No, I'm
And good. Okay, I'm going to move on to our agenda, our schedule and agenda items for the 21st, November 4th, and November 18th. Robin, any comment on the upcoming agenda items?
I lost the agenda. I'm turning into you, John. I don't know what I did with it. Let Bob go first and let me look. I mean, the one thing I wanted to do, and I know it's part of Chris's comments, is to put on the agenda the meeting with the recycling committee. So I don't know what agenda that would work best for. But, I think it probably makes sense to, and it's Chris's call, but to have Chris and maybe Bobby Tosi, who I think is de facto in charge of the transfer station. Is that right, Chris?
The highway superintendent
Yeah,
oversees
yeah,
the
yeah,
transfer station.
Yeah, so I would
Robin,
add that.
just in terms of looking at the upcoming items, the 21st looks like it's pretty well packed.
Right,
November 4th looks like maybe a good day for that to happen.
that works for me. I mean, you know, we should make sure it works for the recycling committee, because I think we would like them to come.
Bob, anything you'd like to add or
No,
comments?
I just have a comment. Is there an opening on the Dover School Committee?
I'm not aware.
I mean, just that there's an appointment to the Dover School Committee on the November 4th proposed agenda.
There wasn't a resignation.
I'm sorry, that did not come across.
So a memo was sent out to the board from Mona and school administration that there's a vacancy about 2 weeks on the school committee, and that we are following the same process that the board has followed for the other vacancy there, as well as the other elected entities where there's a vacancy, where the school committee will make a recommendation to the Board of Selectmen for someone to fill the remainder of that term. And then the Board of Selectmen will have an opportunity to vote that up or down. It's a process that you followed, I think, as recently as about 8 months ago.
Yeah, just that I hadn't heard it, and I am not a user of social media. I consider it as time sink. So if it's on social media, but it's not part of our process, I don't pay attention to it.
We'll make sure the documents get sent back out.
Yeah.
Thanks, Bob. So, Chris, I'm going to move to item number 4, which is your update, and ask, Chris, would you like to hear from the recycling folks before or after your comments?
So all I had this evening was to just let the board know, as you do know, that the recycling committee had emailed you with some observations and some recommendations as it relates to staffing at the transfer station, and that that Bobby has a copy of it and is taking it under advisement as he builds the budget for FY23. And I really just wanted to let you guys know that we'll touch upon this at the Board of Selectmen hearings during the budget process. But it sounds like there's been some expressed interest here this evening to have this be perhaps an agenda item before or separate from the budget process. So I'd look for the board's guidance on if you'd like to do that and when you'd like to.
So I certainly would. I would just like to get, have a discussion about the memo. Clearly a lot of thought went into it. So I think it's worthwhile having a discussion that probably will dovetail well with the budget discussions. It's basically, in my mind, an information session.
And I suppose it'll be tied into how it fits in with the DPW restructuring.
I'm sorry, Bob, can you repeat what you just said?
I said, I'm assuming that it will be also included as part of the DPW, sort of set of recommendations that we're looking to implement.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I would suspect that as we address all of these items that fall under that umbrella, that this will be one of the items, and it's just one of the departments that come under the organization. Kate, is Jen available? Can you see her? Carol is raising her hand politely. Carol, can you hear me?
Yeah, I'm just going off mute. Thank you.
Okay, so Carol, in the chat bar, were you referring to the comments regarding what Jerry had mentioned, or are you referring to the comments on the property at 130 Dedham Street, or are you referring to the comments of the school committee?
School committee.
Okay, okay, because I see, that makes sense. Yeah, that's Bob referring to not being on social media.
Yeah.
Got it.
Which is the way everybody finds out about things these days. So first of all, I just wanted to mention that if you do away with the fence viewers, that as you retire off the Board of Selectmen, you will be unemployed by the town of Dover because the fence viewers are the most recent retired selectmen. So that may change your view of that position.
Wow.
All the more reason to do away with it, Carol. All the more reason.
So Carol,
But
when we
Jen-
were discussing, when you brought up at the open space, the clear cutting of the property at the top of your driveway, that was clear cut, that looks right through Center Street, almost all the way to Haven Terrace. I was going to ask you, with regards to that the only thing that you could possibly now see that's left to see is the fence on the property on Haven Street from the top of your driveway.
Talking about getting your keeping your finger on the pulse of the town through social media, that clearing was posted with just a comment by a longtime citizen of Dover on Nextdoor, and it resulted in probably 40 or 50 comments over 5 or 6 days. And certainly from a planning board standpoint, gave us an excellent sense of the issues and thoughts of a wide swath of the population. So actually, this was a case where social media was actually very, very beneficial. But back to, I assume that you recognize me because Jen isn't here. Jen had a dinner engagement, so we hadn't been informed that the memo was on the agenda. So when we saw it on the agenda, we thought that actually it was going to be a substantive discussion. So as long as it's going to be on the agenda, whenever, November or whatever, then we can sort of hold off by discussing it and me making any comments at this point. I would only say that the memo was done in conjunction with Bobby, and we never would have sent anything that Bobby did not support. So that's all I have to say on that at this point. We'll be looking forward to a November, and we'll get some data for you at that point too.
Okay. The only thing that I would add to that is, Carol, thank Jen, for her willingness to serve, new member to be the chair of the committee. That's
that's
sort
great.
of baptism by fire. Welcome aboard. You're
Goodness. You know how to arm twist too, right?
So yes, sure, know exactly how that works. Robin, anything you'd like to add?
No.
Bob?
Nope.
Okay, thank you.
Carol, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Chris?
Yep. So I've got 3 things related to water, one of which was already discussed this evening. That was the small break at Springdale line. As Carl mentioned, had little impact to users, and they'll be repairing that next week. There will be a lane down on Springdale during that repair, but the road will still be open and passable. I also wanted to update the board and let you know that Colonial Water Company and their contracted engineer, Tata and Howard, has completed the first phase of their assessment. This was the assessment that was required by the DEP, given the long-term water discoloration episodes that we're experiencing in town. That document is on the Colonial Waters website. It's also linked on the town's water website as well. To summarize, their Tata and Howard's assessment looked at the source water for Colonial, and based on the results of their assessment, are led to believe that higher than unusual levels of manganese in two of the major source wells that Colonial Water uses is likely the culprit of this discoloration. And they provided Colonial Water with a few recommendations on how to resolve that. Some are pretty cost and labor intensive. Others may prove more difficult to implement, such as looking for new water sources. So Tate and Howard will complete their work, a second phase, which will be an evaluation and assessment of Colonial Water Company's infrastructure so that they're able to tie all that information together to get a clearer, more definitive picture on what the likely cause of the discoloration is. That second phase assessment is anticipated to be completed in mid-October. I also thought that it was time, and this was a conversation in conjunction with the chair, to have Colonial Water Company, their engineering consulting firm, as well as the DEP, to come back to provide the community with an update on the latest on what's occurring and where they're going next. I do have that scheduled on your upcoming agenda on the 21st. Plan to have that public session then, unless I hear otherwise from the board. Two final things. The board received an email from a resident on Taylor Lane who was concerned with the orange cones that have been placed on the corner there by the highway department. Those cones are placed there because the police department has been receiving complaints recently from, not complaints, concerns, I would say, from residents on the street of the speeding, or the speed in which cars are coming off of Walpole and turning onto Taylor Lane. As I think most folks know, Taylor is a pretty narrow street. So if you've got someone coming off of Walpole, even at 30 miles an hour, it's a pretty fast clip. And if someone's coming out toward Walpole, it's difficult for them to see taking that turn. So the police department and the highway department thought that the temporary bump out, which is what the cones are there for, might have a slowing, calming effect on traffic coming off of Walpole. They put that up as a temporary measure, and they're currently working with all the residents in the area, as they do with other traffic mitigation concerns, to take their input and their feedback, and if it results in any recommendations that impact the roadway or the speed limit, they'll certainly bring that back to the board for your consideration. But I wanted to provide you with an update on that. And then lastly, one of the two collective bargaining agreements that we have is up for renewal this year. The highway CBA will expire at the end of this fiscal year. We received formal notice from the union representatives that they're ready to commence bargaining for a successor agreement. So I plan to move forward with that process in keeping with past practice. I was planning on just continuing to have John be involved in that process, as he has been in the past, but I wanted to share that with the board in case there was a desire to change things up. So those are the major updates that I have for you this evening.
Chris, I'll second your motion to nominate John for the CBA with the Highway Department. Because he did do a spectacular job the last time, I can tell you.
Couldn't come out fast enough. It's like a record. Bob's.
I also see like 45 more gray hairs. I like it.
And he seemed to really enjoy it. So.
He did. He was like a champ. There's no question about it.
Robin, you weren't here when I did this before, but ready? This is before Bob, after Bob. Look at
Don't
all
you
those
think
grants.
it's an
That's just a
improvement?
couple of years. My God. You couldn't have got that out fast enough. Hey, Chris, just a couple of really quick things along those same lines. That one, the bump out that you just reported at Taylor Lane. We did the very, very same thing on Haven Street a couple of years ago, where Haven meets Springdale, and the effect was dramatic with regards to cars coming down Springdale, taking a right onto Haven. As you know, Haven's much narrower, much more residential, but it's a cut through street. So the effect on traffic was considerable. It really does slow down the cars, and it allows a car coming up Haven, whether they're taking a right or a left onto Springdale, much better visibility and timing. It's really hard. Like if you're coming out of Bob Street or Robin Street and you're taking a right or a left, to judge the speed of the car coming down the hill and coming down the hill if they're taking a right up to Cedar Hill. So those types of things I think are really helpful. On the other side of it, I was just wondering, Carl, again, you're still on the call. There's a really bad blind spot at Breton Road, and Breton Road is just down Walpole from Taylor, but it's on the other side of the street. So when you're at Breton Road, it is very, very hard to see a car coming down the hill on Walpole from coming from Taylor going into town. Is there any traffic mitigation of widening or potentially making that blind spot somewhat more visible? Carl, do you know what I'm talking about?
Yes, I do. I will talk to Bobby about that, the superintendent of streets.
Okay. Thank you.
That's out of my purview.
Temporarily.
Yeah, temporarily, right.
Building superintendent.
Temporarily. Robin, anything else to add to Chris?
No, I do not.
John, you froze.
In a good pose, though.
Yeah, I think he looks better this way than he does, even in that, phony
Right.
photo we keep showing.
Right.
So Chris, John, you back?
Yeah.
Okay, you were frozen there for a couple of 15 seconds.
All right. I'm back.
I have one thing.
Okay.
I think you're frozen again.
Can you hear me, Bob?
You're breaking up.
Did I go away?
No, all right.
I don't know. How about now?
Yeah, I think you got it now.
Okay.
So I have one thing for Chris, if you don't mind.
Sure.
So Chris, I'm always intrigued by a situation that's existed for a very long time, and then we get a couple of concerns or complaints from the neighborhood that's been stable for whatever. And my question is always, what's changed? Has some family in the neighborhood child got to driving age? Is somebody moved in that's new to the area? Because again, this is a residential area. People know the streets. It seems to be that someone unfamiliar with, because it is narrow, and with someone unfamiliar with the neighborhood or the area, it has either aged into driving or moved into the area and is unaware. And I just don't know if anybody knows if that is a cause.
I personally think it's ways. Like there is so much more traffic on these back roads than there ever was before. I don't remember as much traffic as there is on Cedar Hill Road, the bottom part. If you go walking at certain times of day, I just,
Clearly, there's the people, you go from Pine Street up and then, yes, absolutely right. But.
I just think with Waze, people, it just directs people down. There's just a lot more volume on the side streets than there ever was.
But my point, I guess, with Taylor Lane is it only goes to Valley, right? I mean, it doesn't really go anywhere.
Yeah, I don't know. Maybe people get lost.
They used to get lost. They used to drive down my driveway thinking it was a cut through to Colonial.
Right.
So anyway, Chris, I'd like that at least part of Bobby and the chief's work is just ask, has anything changed that that may be contributing to this particular issue?
I don't have any in speaking with the both of them, we don't have any concrete facts as it relates to actually any reported incidents, whether it be, with a vehicle and a cyclist or, a vehicle being pulled over, an accident. One of the speculative or anecdotal, things that has been tossed around is that, with there's two factors related to COVID. One is, more people being remote and at home during the day. And the second factor of that is a lot of online shopping, which has increased vehicular deliveries, which I'm sure the recycling committee is seeing. All of the cardboard.
I got more boxes than I know what to do with the my daughters and wife buying all this stuff. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. So, but again, both those departments don't have anything that they can point to, from a definitive statistical standpoint that, X has occurred or Y has occurred there.
Okay,
Could be the COVID factor.
Bob, is that good?
Yeah, I mean, I see a note, I think, from either Carl or Jerry. I understand that it's a quick pass through to Valley Road or but there's really it's a complete residential area. So people who were doing this would know, you would presume would know, unless it's a delivery, would know the roads. Anyway, it was just, I'm always curious about something that, it's like if you put in a change to a systems program, you should expect there to be some issues. And this seems the same thing. You always have to understand what the cause is. Anyway.
Yeah. So I just like to just make a comment and on the chat box that Jerry did correct me. It was Church Street into Springdale, not Haven. I apologize for that, but the Haven into Center Street connection was the blinking stop sign that we installed a couple of years ago. So, but the net result is the same. It's just traffic mitigation and safety in these times are going to be, I think, constantly changing. So I think it's important to stay on top of it and to try to be mindful of what folks in these situations that you described, Bob, are experiencing. So I think that is important. So if there's nothing else to add, I'd like to move to the consent agenda. We have a couple of items. The summary: approve the acceptance of the Commonwealth of Massachusetts grants totaling $71,266 for the police department's 911 dispatch center and office training. Approve the 2021 one-day special liquor licenses for October 2nd retroactive, November 13th and 18th, and to approve the September 1st, 2021 open session meeting minutes. Any comments on either of those? Robin or Bob?
No.
So hearing none, I move to approve the consent agenda as presented. Ask for a second. Robin?
Second.
All in favor? I, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
Thank you very much. And Chris, anything else you'd like to add?
Nothing further, no, John, just a motion whenever the board's ready to adjourn the meeting and head into executive session.
Okay. As you know, that this requires a specific motion. So I move the board enter into executive session, not to return to open session, to discuss lease negotiations for the highway garage solar roof project located at 2 Dedham Street. Further, as chair, I declare that an open meeting discussion may have detrimental effect on the negotiation position of the town. For this, we're going to call a roll for the vote. All in favor. I, John Jeffries.
I, Robin Hunter.
Hi, Bob Springett.
So moved. So thank you, everyone. And we're going to end this session. And Kate, we're going to physically pick up a second session on Zoom. Is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so I'll give everybody a couple of minutes to do whatever they need to do, and we will reconvene on our next session. And I thank everyone, Carl, Carol, everyone who phoned in, Jerry, thank you for your participation this evening. We're adjourned.